My name is Jason Hurd. I recently completed 10 years of honorable service to my country in both the U.S. Army and the Tennessee National Guard. I served in central Baghdad from November of '04 to November of '05. I'm from a little place nestled in the mountains of East Tennessee called Kingsport, and hence the mountain man beard. People don't really trust you if you're clean-shaven there. Kingsport is truly small-town America. There's a Baptist church on every street corner, and even the high-class restaurants serve biscuits and gravy. My father, Carl C. Hurd, who died in 2000, he was 76 years old. He was a Marine during World War II. Obviously, I was a latecomer in his life. He didn't have me until in his late 50s. As a matter of fact, when he died, shortly after that, I have the 2 World War II battles he participated in tattooed on my arm, and my father had the same tattoo. He was in the Pacific Campaign and participated in the battles of Tarawa and Guadalcanal, which were some of the bloodiest occurrences of that war. I decided to join the military in 1997. I was 17 years old. I had just graduated from high school, and I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with my life. My father was adamantly opposed to me serving in the military. My father was one of the most warmongering, gun-loving people you could ever meet. But he didn't feel that way when it came to his son because he knew the negative psychological consequences of combat service. Looking back, I know for a fact that my father had post-traumatic stress disorder. He had the rage, he had the nightmares, and he had the flashbacks. I decided against my father's wishes to go into the military as a medic in August of '97. I went to basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. I did my medical training at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, and I spent the rest of my 4-year tour on active duty at Fort Lewis, Washington, serving under the 2nd ID. Originally, I intended to do my 4 years and get off of active duty and go to college in in Johnson City, Tennessee. But about a month before I left active duty, a National Guard recruiter approached me and said, "Hey, we've got a expanded unit in your hometown in Kingsport, and if you decide to join that, we can give you a lot of college money." And he offered me so much college money that it swayed my vote, so I decided to sign up for 6 more years in the Tennessee National Guard. I deployed to Iraq in June of '07, we deployed to Camp Shelby, Mississippi for a train-up to go to Iraq in June of '04. We got into Iraq in November of '04, and I was there until November of '05. I served as a medic with Troop F, 2nd Squadron, 278th Regimental Combat Team. Our first 6 months in country were relatively uneventful. We had missions that did not expose us to a lot of danger. We lived inside the Green Zone, otherwise known as the International Zone, in central Baghdad. Our first mission, when we got on the ground, we manned observation points around the Green Zone. We had 3 in a zoo where the border of the Green Zone passes through, and we had 2 on the Tigris River that overlooked it. These few months, like I said, were relatively uneventful. Except for one incident that I can remember. One of the observation points that overlooked the Tigris River looked out at the old Republican Guard barracks, which were across the river. And there was one of those buildings that was sort of dilapidated. However, we knew that squatters had taken this building over, and we actually used to make jokes that this place looked like a crack house and that they were running drugs out of there. We had no evidence of that. It was just joking. One day, Iraqi police got into an exchange of gunfire with some unknown individuals around that building. Some of the stray rounds came across the Tigris River and hit the shield of one of our Hummers. The gunner atop that Hummer decided to open fire with his .50 caliber machine gun into that building. He expended about a case and a half of ammunition. And I'm no weapons expert, I'm a medic, but I talked to some of my colleagues just the other night, and to put this into perspective for you all, Each case of 50 cal ammunition holds about 150 rounds. A case and a half is well over 200 rounds. Over 200 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition could take out just about every single person in this room. We fired indiscriminately and unnecessarily at this building. We never got a body count. We never got a casualty count afterwards. Another unit came through and swept up that mess. Ladies and gentlemen, things like that happen every day in Iraq. We react out of fear. Fear for our lives, and we cause complete and utter destruction. After we finished the mission manning those observation points, we moved on. My platoon specifically was tasked with running security escort for 2 explosive ordnance teams, 1 U.S. Navy and 1 Australian EOD team. On day 1, the U.S. Navy team took us all aside for some specialized training. They took us aside and said, look, EOD teams are some of the most highly targeted entities in Iraq. The reason being is because, hey, we're the guys that go out and we disarm car bombs. We mess up the tactics and the operations of the insurgency. That's why we're highly targeted. So you guys have to use more aggressive tactics to protect us. And they explained to us that what we were to do is keep a 50-meter perimeter, a 50-meter bubble around our trucks at all times, whether we're driving down the road or whether we're stationary. And if anything comes in that 50-meter bubble, we're to get it out immediately. If it doesn't want to move, we use what are called levels of aggression. Your first option is to try to push it out by using hand signals, hand and arm signals. Your next option is to fire a warning shot into the ground. And from there on, you walk bullets up the car, and your last option is to shoot the person driving the car. This is for our own protection. Car bombs are a real danger in Iraq, and in fact, that's the vast majority of what I saw in Baghdad is car bombings. My unit adhered strictly to these guidelines for a few weeks. But as time went on and the absurdity of war sat in, they started taking things too far. Individuals from my unit indiscriminately and unnecessarily opened fire on innocent civilians as they're driving down the road on their own streets. My unit, individuals from my platoon, would fire into the grills of these cars and then come back in the evenings after missions were done and brag about it. They would say, hey, did you guys see that car I shot at? It spewed radiator fluid all over the ground. Wasn't that cool? I remember thinking back on that and how appalled I was that we were bragging about these things, that we were laughing. But that's what you do in a combat zone. That is your reality. That is how you deal with that predicament.